Hello everyone, I welcome you all back to this course of psychology, and today we are going to start chapter 1 in detail. There are many things that we are going to cover about psychology in this particular chapter, and it's a lengthy and a deep one too. So here we start. Psychology as a science. Despite the differences in their interests, areas of study and approaches, all psychologists have one thing in common. They rely on scientific methods. Research psychologists use scientific methods to create new knowledge about the causes of behavior, whereas psychologists, practitioners such as clinical, counseling, industrial, organizational, and school psychologists use existing research to enhance the everyday life of others. The science of psychology is important for both researchers and practitioners. In a sense, all humans are scientists. We all have an interest in asking and answering questions about our world. We want to know why things happen, when and if are they likely to happen again, and how to reproduce or change them. Such knowledge enables us to predict our own behavior and that of others. We may even collect data, that is, any information collected through formal observation or measurement, to aid us in the undertaking. It has been argued that people are everyday scientists who conduct research projects to answer questions about behavior, like Nisbet and Ross from 1980, who conducts research products to answer questions about behavior. When we perform poorly on an important test, we try to understand what caused our failure to remember or understand the material and what might help us to do better next time. When our good friends Monisha and Charlie break up despite the fact that they appear to have a relationship made in heaven, we try to determine what happened. When we contemplate the rise of terrorist acts around the world, we try to investigate the causes of this problem by looking at the terrorists themselves, the situation around them, and the others' response to them. Then we hop on to the topic of the problem of intuition. The results of these everyday research projects can teach us many principles of human behavior. We learn through experience that if we give someone bad news, he or she may blame us even though the news was not our fault. We learn that people may become depressed after they fail at an important task. We see that aggressive behavior occurs frequently in our society, and we develop theories to explain why this is so. These insights are part of everyday social life. In fact, much research in psychology involves the scientific study of everyday behavior. The problem, however, with the way people collect and interpret data in their daily lives is that they are not always particularly thorough. Often when one explanation for an event seems right, we adopt that explanation as the truth even when the other explanations are possible and potentially more accurate. For example, eyewitnesses to violent crimes are often extremely confident in their identification of the perpetrators of these crimes. But the research finds that eyewitnesses are no less confident in their identification when they are incorrect and when they are correct. People may also become convinced of the existence of extrasensory perception, ESP, of the predictive value of astrology when there is no evidence for either. Furthermore, psychologists have also found that there are a variety of cognitive and motivational biases that frequently influence our perception and lead us to draw erroneous conclusions. In summary, accepting explanations for events without testing them thoroughly may lead us to think that we know the causes of things when we really don't know. Now, research focus and unconscious preferences for the letters of our own name. A study reported in the Journal of Consumer Research demonstrates the extent to which people can be unaware of the causes of their own behavior. The research demonstrated that at least under certain conditions, people frequently prefer brand names that contain the letter of their own name to brand names that do not contain the letter of their own name. The research participants were recruited in pairs and were told that the research was a test of different types of tea. For each pair of participants, the experimenter created 2 teas and named them by adding the word stem Oki to the first 3 letters of each participant's first name. For example, the Jonathan and Elizabeth. The name of the teas could have been Junoki and Ilioki. The participants were then shown 20 packets of tea that were supposedly being tested. 18 packets were labeled made up of Japanese names, Makaku, Somatu, and they too were labeled with the brand names constructed from the participant's name. The experimenter explained that each participant would taste only 2 teas and would be allowed to choose one of the packet of these two to take home. One of the two participants was asked to draw slips of paper to select two brands which would be tasted at this session. However, the drawing was rigged so that the two brands containing the participants' names were a task designed to heighten their needs for self-esteem, and that was expected to increase their desire to choose the brand that the letters with their name. Specifically, the participants all wrote about an aspect of themselves and that they would like to change. After the teas were ready, the participants tasted them and chose to take a packet of one of those teas home with them. After they made their choice, the participants were asked why they chose the tea they had chosen, and then the true purpose of the study was explained to them. The results of this study found that participants chose the tea that included the first three letters of their name significantly more frequently, 64% of the time, than they choose the tea that included the first three letters of the partner's name, and only 36% of the time. Furthermore, the decisions were made unconsciously. The participants did not know why they chose the tea they chose. When they were asked, more than 90% of the participants thought that they had chosen on the basis of taste, whereas only 5% of them mentioned the real cause, that the brand name contained the letters of their name. Once we learn about the outcome of a given event, we frequently believe that we would have been able to predict the outcome ahead of time. For instance, if half of a class students is told that the research concerning attraction between people has demonstrated that opposites attract, and the other half is told out that research has demonstrated that birds of a feather flock together, most of the students will report believing that the outcome that they have just read about is true, and that they would have predicted the outcome before they had read it about it. Of course, both of these contradictory outcomes cannot be true. The problem is that just reading a description of research finding leads us to think of many cases we know that support the findings and thus makes them seem unbelievable. Now, why psychologists rely on empirical methods? All scientists, whether they are psychists, chemists, biologists, sociologists, or psychologists, use empirical methods to study the topic that interests them. Empirical methods include the process of collecting and organizing data and drawing conclusions about those data. The empirical methods used by scientists have developed over many years and provide a basis for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data with a common framework in which information can be shared. We can label the scientific method as the set of assumptions, rules, and procedures that scientists use to conduct empirical research. Although scientific research is an important method of studying human behavior, not all questions can be answered using scientific approaches. Statements that cannot be objectively measured or objectively determined to be true or false are not within the domain of scientific inquiry. Scientists therefore draw a distinction between the values and facts. Values are personal statements such as abortion should not be permitted in this country, I will go to heaven when I die, or it is important to study psychology. Facts are objective statements determined to be accurate through empirical study. Examples are, there were more than 21,000 homicides in the United States in 2009, or research demonstrates that individuals who are exposed to highly stressful situations over long periods of time develop more health problems than those who are not. Because values cannot be considered to be either true or false. Science cannot prove or disprove them. Nevertheless, examples of values and facts in scientific research can sometimes provide facts that can help people develop their values. For instance, science may not be able to objectively measure the impact of unwanted children on a society or the psychological trauma suffered by women who have abortions. Although scientists use research to establish facts, the distinction between values and facts is not always clear-cut. Sometimes statements that scientists consider to be factual later on the basis of further research turn out to be partially or even entirely incorrect. Although science is not perfect, the requirements of empiricism and objectivity result in a much greater chance of producing an accurate understanding of human behavior than is available through other approaches.